a second chance. Prepare for a revelation that will leave you breathless. Do you believe in second chances, or is fate already written? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video so you don't miss any of our stories. Julian Vance, or so the world believed, had it all. At 32, he was the CEO of Apex Global, a multi-billion-dollar tech empire built on artificial intelligence and cloud innovation, based in vibrant New York City. His face graced the covers of magazines. He gave keynote speeches at global summits, and he shook hands with the most influential figures. Every photo showed him as impeccable: dark hair, perfectly styled, penetrating eyes that held a cold, calculated indifference, and a smile capable of sealing deals before a contract was even read. He lived in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, drove a custom-designed electric sports car, and wore bespoke suits worth more than most people's rent. To everyone looking in, he was flawless, ambitious, disciplined, and destined for greatness. But there was one thing Julian didn't have, and for which he had once risked everything: love. 5 years earlier, before he fully stepped into his CEO role, Julian had been with someone who didn't fit into the life plan his family had laid out for him. Her name was Amelia Hayes. She wasn't a socialite or a tech investor. She wasn't born rich. She was a graduate student from Portland, studying architecture with scholarships and odd jobs, with paint on her jeans and notebooks full of messy sketches. She had long brown hair, expressive blue eyes, and a way of looking at Julian that made him feel like he was more than his title. With her, he didn't have to perform. With her, he laughed louder, slept better, and dreamed more freely. They met at a charity event he had only attended out of obligation. She was helping set up stage lights, and he bumped into her while checking his phone. It was the most human moment he'd had in months. Their relationship blossomed in private. Long walks through Greenwich Village, takeout on rooftops, late-night conversations about dreams and fears. She didn't care about his money. She teased him about his expensive watch and refused to let him pay her rent. She made him feel real in a world where everything about him seemed orchestrated. For the first time in his life, he imagined a future that didn't revolve around quarterly earnings or board meetings. He pictured a small wedding on the Oregon coast, a cozy home, kids with blue eyes and wild energy. He imagined Amelia in every version of that future, but his parents had other plans. When they learned about Amelia, the reaction was immediate and brutal. His father, Mr. Vance, chairman of the board, and one of the coldest men Julian had ever known, called him into his office and put it plainly. "She is not your equal. She dilutes your image. Marry her, and we will begin the process of removing you from the succession." His mother didn't bother to hide her disdain either. "Do you really want to embarrass the family?" she asked. "What will the shareholders think when they see you with someone so common?" Julian tried to resist. He fought. He told them he didn't care about perception. But Apex Global wasn't just a company. It was an empire, passed down for 3 generations. His name was a brand. His face was an investment. And as the pressure mounted, from family, from the board, from advisors reminding him of his obligations, Julian felt the walls closing in. Worst of all, he never told Amelia the truth. He simply ended it one day. No explanation. No discussion. He said he needed to focus on his career and walked out of her apartment, leaving behind the woman he had imagined forever with. Amelia called once, then twice. Then she stopped. He never answered. He buried himself in work and tried to convince himself that it had been necessary, that it was for the best. But not a single day went by that he didn't think of her, that he didn't see something that reminded him of the life he had left behind. He missed her laugh, The way she said his name when she was angry. The way she made him feel like a man, not a product. Still, he never sought her out, because admitting he was wrong would mean facing everything he had given up. And at that time, Julian Vance didn't know how to face regret. Not yet. What would you do if the person you love vanished without an explanation? Comment your thoughts below. A mother's strength, Amelia Hayes had never believed in fairy tales, but falling in love with Julian Vance had felt dangerously close to one. For a brief time, it had been more than she had ever dreamed possible. She remembered the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. She remembered the nights on the rooftop when the city lights made the sky seem endless, and Julian would whisper about wanting to escape the world of cameras and boardrooms just to live a normal life. With her, she believed him. She believed every word, every unfinished promise in the spaces between kisses and silences. But one day, he was just gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just a cold, carefully worded message that he needed space to focus on his future. She had waited for him. She tried to find him. She left one long, desperate voicemail, then another. But the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was deliberate. It was final. And so she stopped waiting. Amelia poured herself into her work, pouring her heartbreak into blueprints and deadlines, trying to lose herself in her studies. But only a few weeks later, she started to feel the changes in her body, the fatigue, the nausea, the missed period. She told herself it was stress, but when she took a pregnancy test and saw the result, her breath caught. She didn't cry. She just stood in the bathroom, staring at the word positive, as if it were written in a foreign language. Then, she sat on the edge of her bed and said nothing for a very, very long time. The doctor confirmed her pregnancy, but the ultrasound revealed something she hadn't expected. 2 heartbeats. Twins. 2 lives growing inside her. 2 reminders of a man who had walked away without looking back. She considered calling him again. She imagined what she would say. But then she remembered the voicemail, the cold response from his assistant, the way he had disappeared as if she meant nothing, and she knew she couldn't put herself through that again. So she didn't call. She didn't write. She deleted his number. She accepted, deep in her soul, that he was not coming back. Amelia decided to leave New York. There was no place for her there anymore. She got a job in a smaller city, Portland, at a modest architecture firm where no one asked questions about her past. She rented a small apartment and lived carefully, saving every dime. The twin pregnancy was difficult, but she was tougher. She worked through swollen feet, sleepless nights, and the fear of being completely alone in the world. She took prenatal vitamins with food stamps. She skipped meals to pay for baby clothes. And when the time came, she gave birth to 2 healthy, beautiful boys, Noah and Max. They had blonde hair from the start, and the bluest eyes she had ever seen. It was like looking at 2 small versions of the man she had once loved. At first, it broke her heart to see him in their faces. But over time, that feeling softened into something else, something fiercer. Love. Not for what could have been, but for what was. Her boys were everything. They were wild, loud, messy, and perfect. They were the reason she got out of bed when her body ached and her bank account hit 0. She worked late into the night. She took on freelance jobs. She took commissions, drawing blueprints for storefronts, cafes, even barns. Anything that would keep the lights on. She fed her boys, clothed them, kissed their scraped knees, and read them bedtime stories, even when she was too tired to stand. Amelia never mentioned Julian's name, not once. When the boys asked her why they didn't have a dad, She told them the truth, softly, that sometimes people leave because they are scared of love, and it isn't their fault, or ours either. She didn't speak of revenge. She didn't dwell on the past. She poured all her energy into raising two curious and brave little boys who had no idea they carried a last name that had once dominated a city. And yet, late at night, when they were asleep, she sometimes found herself wondering what Julian would say if he saw them. Would he recognize them as his? Would he feel anything? Or would he do what he did best? Turn away and pretend nothing mattered? She told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't care, that she had built a life without him. And it was true, but fate, as always, had other plans. Do you believe in destiny? Or do we write our own story? Leave a comment with your theories, and don't forget to like this video if you're enjoying the story. An impossible moment. The invitation came unexpectedly, hidden in Amelia's humble email inbox with a generic subject line: Architectural Futures Forum. Speaker selection. At first, she assumed it was a mistake. She had never presented at a major event, let alone one in Los Angeles. But the message was real. They had reviewed her design proposal for a women's shelter, sustainable, low cost, and community-focused, and they wanted her to speak on the panel. It wasn't paid, but they would cover travel and lodging. It was the opportunity she had dreamed of for years, and the kind of recognition she never thought she would receive as a single mother of two. Working quietly in the architecture world, she only hesitated for a moment. Then she said yeah. Coming back to the big city after 5 years felt surreal. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. She arrived with Noah and Max, 2 energetic 5-year-olds who asked endless questions on the flight, who looked at the skyline with wide-eyed wonder, and said the buildings looked like Lego towers. She dressed them smartly for the forum, in small collared shirts and clean sneakers, and packed a bag full of coloring books and snacks to keep them busy while she presented. She had no one to watch them, and she wasn't going to let that stop her. They sat patiently near the back of the exhibition space as she stood next to her model of the shelter, her palms slightly sweaty, her heart racing. The event was held in a downtown skyscraper with glass walls wrapping around the venue and sunlight pouring in. She tried not to think about the possibility of running into anyone she knew. Los Angeles was big. He wouldn't be here. Why would he be? Then she heard his voice. She was in the middle of answering a question from a reporter when the voice cut through the air, low, confident, and too familiar to ignore. She froze. Her stomach clenched before her eyes confirmed it. Julian Vance was less than 20 feet away, laughing softly with a group of smartly dressed sponsors. He hadn't changed. Blonde hair still impeccable. Posture as natural as ever, but now older, more weathered. His expression was calm until it landed on her. Amelia saw the moment he took it all in. First confusion, then shock, then something deeper. His eyes shifted from her to the 2 little boys sitting on the floor behind her table, coloring quietly on the carpet. Time slowed down. Julian's face went pale. His gaze locked on the twins, and Amelia could see the gears turning, fast and desperate. She didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. He walked toward her. She tensed, gripping the edge of the display table as if it could anchor her to the floor. The people around them seemed to fade into background noise. The city, the forum, the years. All of it shrank to this one impossible moment. He stopped in front of her, his voice barely audible. "Amelia." She didn't respond. He looked down at the boys again, then back at her, visibly shaken. "Are they?" She held his gaze. "Yes," she said, calm and quiet. They're yours. He stepped back, stunned. For a moment, he looked like someone who had just been punched. I didn't know, he said. I had no idea. I know, she replied, her voice firm. I tried. You made sure I couldn't contact you. He blinked, trying to process everything. But why didn't you try again? Amelia laughed softly, bitter and tired. I did. I left messages. I sent letters. Your assistant told me never to call again. I assumed you had made your choice. Julian looked down. The weight of understanding settled heavily on his face. He turned to look at the boys again, still not knowing who he was. Noah looked up, smiled, and waved at him innocently. I need to talk to you, Julian said, his voice barely breaking. Amelia crossed her arms. You want to talk now? After 5 years? At a public event? He hesitated. Then he nodded slowly. Yes, I need to explain, and I need to understand. She stared at him for a long time. The pain she had buried deep bubbled back up, but she didn't let him see it. Not here, not yet. You don't get to come back like nothing happened, she said. But if you really want to understand, start by learning their names. Julian looked at her, and something broke open in his eyes. He turned to the boys again. He knelt down and asked softly, What are your names? The twins looked at him, puzzled but curious. I'm Noah, one said. I'm Max, the other added. What's your name? Julian smiled sadly. I'm Julian. They didn't recognize him. Why would they? Amelia watched from behind the table, her heart pounding. This wasn't the moment she had prepared for. She never thought it would come. And yet, here they were. Not as strangers, not yet as a family. But something had started to change. The truth had finally come to light, and nothing would ever be the same. The truth has come to light. Do you think Julian deserves a second chance? What would you do in Amelia's shoes? Leave your opinions in the comments, and subscribe for more incredible stories like this. Earning trust, Julian didn't sleep that night. After the forum, after the longest, most shocking day of his life, he returned to his penthouse, a place that once felt like the pinnacle of success and now felt hollow, stripped of meaning. The image of the two boys lingered in his mind, haunting and vivid. Noah and Max. Their names echoed in his thoughts like a mantra he had never known he needed. He could still see their eyes, so familiar it ached in his chest, and the way they had looked at him without recognition. They didn't know him. They didn't know he existed. And that realization, more than anything, tore him apart. The next morning, he ordered a private DNA test. He didn't tell anyone. Not his assistant, not his legal team, not his parents. This wasn't about legality. It was about something he couldn't name, something urgent and personal, as if he needed permission to believe the truth, even though every part of him already knew it. The results came back 3 days later. 99% match. There was no denying it. He was their father. Julian stared at the document in silence for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and put it in a drawer, as if it were something sacred and heavy. Not a piece of paper, but a door that had just been opened. A door he had unknowingly locked from the outside 5 years ago. He contacted Amelia through the event coordinator, not wanting to push too hard. She agreed to meet him, once, at a small cafe in the Malasanya neighborhood. No lawyers, no assistants, just them. She arrived with her usual quiet strength, dressed simply, her hair pulled back. She looked tired, but serene, and more beautiful than he remembered. Life had shaped her in new ways. It had added a gravity to her gaze that hadn't been there before. He stood when she walked in. She didn't smile. They sat across from each other, two people with years of pain between them, and 2 children, who, unbeknownst to them, connected them forever. For a long moment, they said nothing. The noise of the cafe hummed around them, cups clinking, milk steaming, quiet conversations. "I got the results," Julian said finally. "They're mine." Amelia nodded. "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find words that meant enough. "I don't know what to tell you." She looked at him, her eyes clear. "Then don't say anything you don't mean." "I mean all of it now," he said. "Amelia, I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know." "I believe you," she said. "But that doesn't erase what happened." He looked down, shame washing over him. "I wanted to fight for you. I was going to. But my parents, the board, it all came crashing down. I didn't know how to be the man they expected and the man you needed. You chose them," she said, without malice. "You walked away." He nodded slowly. "I did. And I had to raise them without you," she continued. "While you were building empires, I was building cribs. While you were giving speeches, I was trying to find enough for dinner." Julian winced. Her words weren't cruel. They were simply true, and they hit harder than he had anticipated. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "Not yet. I just want a chance to know them, to be a part of their lives. Even if it's small. Even if it's—" He paused, his voice wavering. "I can't go back, Amelia. But I can show up now. I can try." She studied him carefully. "They don't know you. They don't even know what a father is. To them, I am their whole world. I don't want to take anything away from you," he said quickly. "I just want to add to what you've built." Amelia exhaled slowly. "They're 5 years old. They don't understand betrayal or loyalty, but they do understand presence. You don't get to come and go. You don't get to start and stop. If you want to be in their lives, it has to be all the way." "I'm all in," he said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." She nodded, still cautious, but something in her posture softened. "Then you'll start slow. Pick them up from school one day. Come to the park. Sit with them. Let them come to you. If they ask questions, answer them honestly. If they run from you, don't chase. Just stay there." Julian nodded, humbled. "Okay, I can do that." Leaving the cafe, they didn't part with hugs or promises. Just an understanding, a fragile agreement between 2 people who no longer loved each other, but who were forever connected. Amelia walked ahead, and Julian followed her at a respectful distance. Not as a partner, not yet as a father, but as a man finally trying to make right what had once gone so terribly wrong. Do you think the path to fatherhood is easy? What does present mean to you in a relationship? Leave your comments, and don't forget that your support is essential for us to continue sharing these stories. Subscribe. Earning the title. Julian didn't expect the word to come so soon. It had been nearly 3 months since he started seeing Noah and Max regularly. He never missed a visit. He was never late. He learned to sit in silence when they were in a bad mood, to engage when they asked for help with puzzles, and to listen when they just needed to talk, even if what they were saying made little sense. He was careful not to push too fast. He had accepted the fact that for now, he was just Julian, the man who brought good snacks, played tag without checking his phone, and laughed at their jokes even when they didn't land. But something had shifted. It was a Saturday afternoon. Amelia had an interview for a new design contract, and she asked Julian if he could watch the boys for a few hours. He agreed immediately, and she dropped them off at his penthouse, which he had recently made kid-friendly, even though he never thought he would need to. Toys now lived in woven baskets in the living room. A small table with crayons and construction paper sat by the window. The fridge was stocked with juice boxes, string cheese, and the kind of cereal with marshmallows he didn't approve of, but bought anyway because they loved it. That afternoon, they built an elaborate pillow fort between the sofas, complete with tunnels and a command center made from old shoe boxes and flashlights. Noah declared himself captain. Max insisted on being science officer because he'd brought a magnifying glass. Julian played along as Commander Dad, a name Max made up in the middle of their game, and said without thinking. Julian froze for a second, caught off guard by the word. Dad. He didn't respond immediately, worried that if he reacted too much, Max would take it back. So he just smiled and went along with the game. But inside, he was a whirlwind of emotion. The word kept echoing in his mind. He hadn't earned it yet. Or maybe he had. Slowly, in pieces. Not through grand gestures, but through consistency, time, and quiet love. Later that evening, after they had eaten takeout and were lying under the pillow fort, still watching a cartoon, Max snuggled up to him and looked at him. Can I call you Dad now, or do I have to wait? Julian felt a lump in his throat. He looked at Max's small, serious face, then at Noah, who was also watching him, silently holding his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Julian reached out and pulled both of them close. You can call me whatever feels right, he said, his voice cracking. But if you want to call me Dad, I would be very proud of that. Max nodded. Noah gave him a small smile, the kind that says more than words. That night, Amelia came to pick them up. She found them asleep on the floor, Max lying on Julian's chest. Noah snuggled up beside him, both snoring softly. Julian had fallen asleep too, his arm protectively around both of them, the TV still on silently in the background. She didn't wake them right away. She stood there for a long moment, just watching. Something inside her, something that had been locked away, started to shift. She saw the way Julian held them in his sleep, as if they had always been there. She saw how safe they looked, how peaceful. When she finally woke him, Julian stirred slowly, blinking as he realized where he was and what time it was. I'm sorry, he whispered. We must have fallen asleep. Amelia shook her head. They were happy. That's all that matters. As he gently lifted the boys and helped her get them to the car, he looked at her. Max called me Dad today, he said quietly. He asked if it was okay. Amelia didn't speak right away. Then she looked at him and said, he wouldn't have asked if he didn't already feel it. The ride home was quiet. Julian was in the back seat with the boys, holding their hands as they slept. Amelia looked in the rearview mirror, and something inside her settled for the first time in a long time. The walls she had built to protect herself, understandable, necessary walls, began to come down. Not all at once, but piece by piece. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. He lay awake in his apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the way Max had looked when he said the word. Dad. It wasn't a title you could claim. It had to be given. Earned. And now it had been. In the silence of that night, for the first time in years, Julian felt complete. Not because of success or wealth or reputation, but because two small boys had chosen to let him in. Not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as their father. A father is built with love and presence. What do you think Julian will do now? Don't miss the conclusion of this moving story. Share this video and give it a big like. The final stand. Julian hadn't planned to confront his parents. He had avoided it for months, repressing the urge every time it arose in him, focusing instead on showing up for Noah and Max, on earning Amelia's cautious trust, on building something genuine from the pieces of the life he had once destroyed. But a point came when the silence no longer felt like strength. It felt like surrender. The more he leaned into fatherhood, the more he saw what he had almost lost forever. and the more unbearable it became to know his parents had stolen it from him with a smile and a firm handshake. He had to face them, not for closure, but for clarity. He needed them to see what they had done, and more importantly, what he would never allow them to do again. He arrived at the Vance estate on a crisp Sunday morning. It was exactly as he remembered, impeccably landscaped, cold, and silent. A place designed for appearances, not for comfort. His father received him in the library, sitting in the same leather armchair where so many past conversations had been framed as sermons. His mother appeared moments later, pristine as always, with an unreadable expression. "I'm surprised you came," his father said, lacing his hands together. "We didn't expect to hear from you again." Julian didn't sit down. He stood near the fireplace, his posture calm but unyielding. "We need to talk. About Amelia. About the boys." His mother stiffened at the mention of her. "We warned you years ago." Julian turned to her, his voice sharp but controlled. "You didn't warn me. You lied to me. You blocked letters. You ignored calls. You told people to keep her away from me." His father's eyes narrowed. "We did what was necessary to protect your future. You were emotional, unfocused. You would have thrown away your entire legacy for a girl who had nothing." Julian took a deep breath, the fury building in his chest. "That girl is the mother of my children. Children you didn't even bother to know existed. She raised them alone, with nothing, and they turned out better than anything this family has ever produced." His mother stood, her voice tight. "Don't be dramatic. Do you think we haven't sacrificed for you? For this name? Your success. My success." Julian cut in. "You have nothing to do with this name anymore. The company, the image, the money. None of it matters if it costs me my humanity. You tried to make me choose between love and legacy, and I listened. I walked away from the only real thing I had, but I will not make that mistake again." There was a heavy silence. His father leaned back, his tone suddenly colder, more strategic. "So what now? You'll go back to some little house with a woman and pretend you're a family man? You think the world will swallow that?" Julian looked at him, disgusted. "I don't care what the world swallows. I care what Noah and Max see when they look at me. I care what kind of man I am when I tuck them in at night. And I care about the woman who carried that weight when I walked away." His mother opened her mouth, but he didn't let her speak. "I'm not here for your blessing. I'm here to tell you that your control ends here. If you cannot accept my family, you will not be a part of our lives. That is your choice, but I'm done living under your version of success." They didn't respond right away. There was a crack in the room, a visible fracture in the illusion of power they had always held over him. For the first time, Julian wasn't the boy looking for approval. He was the man drawing a line. "I pity you," he added in a low voice. "You'll never know them. You'll never get to hear Noah explain how he thinks the moon controls feelings, or see the way Max draws his dreams. You'll miss it all. And one day you'll realize you traded your grandchildren for control." He turned and walked out, leaving them in their perfect, empty house. When he returned to his apartment, Amelia and the boys were waiting. She looked up when he walked in, reading his face instantly. "You told them?" she said. He nodded. "Everything? And?" "They didn't take it well." Amelia walked closer. "Do you regret it?" Julian looked at his sons, who were building block towers on the floor, their laughter echoing through the room. "Not for a second," he said. That night, after the boys were in bed, Amelia handed him a small box. Inside was a photograph, one she had taken weeks ago when he wasn't looking. He was sitting on the park grass, Max in his lap. Noah leaning on his side, all three of them caught in the middle of a laugh. She had had it printed, framed, a silent gesture, a thank you, a beginning. Julian held the photo for a long time before placing it on the bookshelf next to the boys' art projects. He no longer needed anyone else's validation but theirs. His family, his future, the life he finally chose on his own terms. True success. Autumn in Los Angeles has a way of softening everything. The sharp angles of the buildings blurred under the golden light. The noise of traffic seemed gentler, and even the wind carried a kind of calm. For Julian, the change in seasons mirrored what was happening inside him. Something that had been cold for a long time had begun to thaw, and in its place was a warmth he once feared he didn't deserve. It had been almost a year since he first learned about Noah and Max, and every day since had been a choice. He had chosen them. He had chosen Amelia. He had chosen to show up again and again, not as the perfect man, but as a present man. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full. His morning started with spilled cereal, mismatched socks, and the chaos of getting 2 5-year-olds out the door. His nights ended with bedtime stories and small hands snuggled into his shirt as they fell asleep beside him. His penthouse had long since transformed from a sleek, lifeless bachelor pad into a warm, lived-in home, where finger paintings adorned the walls and small sneakers were always thrown near the door. The boys now called him Dad, without hesitation, sometimes with excitement, sometimes with frustration, sometimes in whispers when they needed comfort. And each time, it still hit him with the quiet force of wonder. Amelia had softened too. Not completely. There were still moments when the weight of her history made her pull back a little, but those moments were fewer now, and they were always followed by something small, but significant. A look, a hand on his back, an unfinished but understood phrase. They had rebuilt trust, not through dramatic apologies or grand gestures, but through the simple rhythm of shared responsibility and mutual care. He respected her more than ever, not just for raising the boys alone, but for doing it without letting her pain turn her bitter. She had every reason to shut him out forever, but she didn't. And that forgiveness, unspoken but felt, was the greatest gift he had ever been given. One Saturday morning, as the boys played in the living room and Amelia made coffee in the kitchen, Julian stood at the window with a small box in his hand. It wasn't velvet or a brand name. It was simple, clean, and carefully chosen. Inside was a ring, delicate but strong. He had spent months thinking about how to propose. At first, he pictured something big. Roses, photographers, some grand gesture with the Los Angeles skyline in the background. But that wasn't their story. Their story had been rebuilt in quiet hours, in soft apologies, in hallways littered with Legos and crayon-signed notes. He didn't need fireworks. He needed the truth. He walked into the kitchen and waited for her to look up. She raised an eyebrow at the seriousness of his face. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "That's the point." He took her hand and led her to the living room where the boys were still playing. They looked up, curious but not surprised. Julian knelt down, and for a moment everything around them faded into quiet. "I don't want to rewrite the past," he said. "I just want to write the rest of the story with you in it, as your partner, as the father of our children, as the man who finally understands what it means to love fully and show up completely." Amelia's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She was too strong for that. She smiled, small at first, then wider, and she nodded. "Yes," she said simply, "because I don't need perfection. I just need you." The boys cheered, not entirely sure what had just happened, but sensing it was a good thing. They piled into his arms, unbalancing him until they all fell into a laughing heap on the carpet. Life. The wedding came a few months later. It wasn't extravagant. It didn't need to be. They held it in the small community garden Amelia had helped design years ago in the heart of Portland. Close friends gathered, sitting quietly among rows of late-blooming marigolds and ivy-covered fences. The boys wore matching vests and carried the rings, too excited to walk slowly down the aisle. Amelia wore a simple ivory dress, her hair down, with a daisy tucked behind one ear. Julian couldn't stop smiling as she walked toward him, her steps firm, her eyes locked on his. There were no speeches about destiny or quotes from poems, just vows spoken from the heart, short, honest, unpolished. Promises to choose each other, not just on the bright days, but on the difficult ones too. Promises to be a team of parents, to make mistakes and to forgive them, to hold each other accountable and to hold each other close. When they kissed, it wasn't the kind of kiss that marks a beginning. It was the kind that sealed something already built, slowly, infinitely beautifully. Afterward, as the sun set and the garden glowed with a golden light, Noah and Max ran through the grass, shouting with joy. Julian watched them, his hand entwined with Amelia's, his chest filled with a peace he had never known in his old life of boardrooms and silence. He had once believed that success meant power, image, control. But standing there, barefoot in a garden, with the love of his life beside him and his children chasing butterflies in front of him, he finally understood what it truly meant. He was home. Completely. Finally. And this time, he wasn't going anywhere. This story's ending isn't just satisfying. It's quietly powerful. It doesn't rely on over-the-top redemption or fairy tale perfection, but celebrates the slow, human work of rebuilding. Julian's transformation isn't instant. It is earned, one step at a time, through presence, humility, and a willingness to face what he once ran from. That is what makes it meaningful. Amelia's strength is the emotional backbone of the story. She never needed to be saved. She needed respect, consistency, and truth. And in the end, she got all three, not because she forgave easily, but because she knew her worth. The love they rediscover isn't naive or idealized. It is mature, layered with pain and healing, and stronger for what they have survived. The final image, a family built on love, choice, and second chances, is not just beautiful. It is hopeful. It reminds us that broken things are not always lost. Sometimes they are just waiting to be rebuilt, brick by brick, with honesty. What lesson did you take away from this incredible story? Leave your reflection in the comments. Share the video. And don't forget to subscribe for more soul-touching content.